The British monarchy operates on a blend of centuries-old tradition and modern constitutional practice. Any change to the styling of senior royals reverberates through legal, ceremonial, and public domains. In a hypothetical scenario where Catherine were declared Queen Consort, that declaration would not only trigger ceremonial adjustments, robes, titles at state functions, precedence in processions, but would also prompt legal and symbolic questions that advisors and government ministers would have to manage carefully. Constitutional precedent and the wording of proclamations matter. The legal authority for styles and titles typically flows from established royal prerogative and parliamentary convention, and in recent decades the monarchy has navigated title changes with acute sensitivity to public opinion and diplomatic optics. Drawing on how major outlets have framed previous transitions, for example, the broad, sober coverage when sovereigns changed in modern times, public reaction would be monitored across mainstream media, social platforms, and opinion polling firms, creating a crucible in which messaging must be flawless. Such a development would also demand careful choreography between Buckingham Palace, government officials, and representatives from the Church of England. Historically, when significant changes occur within the royal household, the palace's communications unit works in tandem with the Cabinet Office to ensure constitutional propriety and ceremonial readiness. The delicate intersection of legal formality and emotional symbolism would require a narrative that reassures the public about continuity while acknowledging the personal dimensions at play. In deconstructing this scenario, it is essential to note that media outlets typically balance factual reportage with analysis and commentary, and any announcement would be parsed not just for its immediate content but for what it signals about institutional stability. If such a proclamation coincided with a state-level or high-profile visit by a U.S. president, in this hypothetical, Donald Trump, the diplomatic stakes would multiply. State visits are choreographed to the hour. Ceremonial welcomes, state banquets, and tightly scripted photo opportunities that present a united front of allied relations. Introducing a significant constitutional or ceremonial alteration during such a visit could overshadow the diplomatic agenda and risk eclipsing bilateral priorities such as trade, security cooperation, and shared geopolitical objectives. Historically, when state visits have intersected with domestic controversies, host governments have had to make difficult choices about optics. The United Kingdom has a track record of steering protocol to minimize friction, but international headlines pivot quickly, and what begins as palace news can become the dominant narrative. The visiting U.S. delegation would need rapid briefings and diplomatic guidance to avoid gaffes that amplify tension. An administration intent on extracting political capital could exploit any confusion, turning a carefully managed transfer of titles into a media spectacle that detracts from policy discussions. Conversely, adept diplomatic teams could use the visit to reinforce continuity and demonstrate cohesion by positioning ceremonial developments as natural elements of statecraft rather than crisis points. The interplay between ceremonial monarchy and pragmatic diplomacy would therefore be tested, and communications would need to be fastidious. Every statement, flanking photograph, and seating arrangement would be subject to intense scrutiny, with international outlets comparing approach and reaction across capitals. Describing any sensitive situation around Camilla as a crisis demands clarifying what the term implies. Reputational erosion, contested narratives, or a politically damaging episode that threatens institutional trust. In a speculative frame where Camilla's standing is in flux simultaneously with major royal announcements, the palace's public relations operation would face the classic triad of crisis management: rapid acknowledgement, controlled transparency, and a forward-facing plan. Media behavior in such moments tends to bifurcate. Traditional outlets prioritize verification and context, while digital platforms accelerate rumor and viral commentary. The risk to the monarchy's broader credibility would hinge less on the particulars of any personal dispute and more on the perceived competence of institutional responses. Trusted publications and broadcasters, often cited by analysts as barometers of public sentiment, have in the past highlighted the need for consistent, empathetic messaging to maintain legitimacy. In managing public perception, narrative construction becomes the central battleground. A successful communications cadence would weave legal clarity with humanizing storytelling, emphasizing continuity, duty, and service. A failure to frame the sequence coherently would see headlines fixate on internal tensions and overshadow state business. Given modern media dynamics, where a single misstep can amplify across platforms within hours, the palace would need an integrated approach that combines formal statements with measured, authentic engagement, leaning on the very channels that historically rebuild public trust during sensitive moments. A second address by a monarch in short succession is uncommon and therefore inherently laden with significance. In this hypothetical, King Charles's messaging would be the hinge upon which public reaction pivots. The address must simultaneously assert constitutional steadiness, honor personal dignity, and address public concern without inflaming partisan divides. Effective royal addresses in modern times balance solemnity with relatability. They reaffirm institutional purpose while providing moral leadership. The speechwriter's craft would be tested to synthesize complex legal formalities and emotional resonance into a few paragraphs that carry the weight of the crown while speaking directly to citizens. Crucially, the timing of such an address relative to both the presidential visit and any internal controversy would shape its reception. An address given before the president's arrival could set a tone of continuity that inoculates diplomatic exchanges from distraction. An address given during a visit, however, risks being interpreted as reactive. Public affairs professionals and constitutional advisors would debate framing aggressively. The aim would be to present an unshakable institution that is adaptable, compassionate, and above the fray of partisan spectacle. In that calculus, every rhetorical choice, from opening line to closing benediction, would be optimized for clarity, empathy, and institutional preservation. This hypothetical exploration reveals how tightly woven constitutional practice, media dynamics, and diplomatic theater are in modern monarchy-state relations. A simultaneous declaration regarding royal titles, a second royal address, a major foreign visit, and a reputation challenge would create an environment where messaging, timing, and theatrical precision determine whether the narrative consolidates stability or sparks protracted controversy. For analysts, communicators, and policymakers, the lesson is clear. Anticipate intersecting timelines and prepare narratives that address both fact and feeling with equal seriousness.